And so here we have a chance to hear from an organization, Simply Green, Anika, Arora, and Divya, Arora. Anika is a sophomore at Parsippany Hills High School. Divya is an 8th grader at Brooklawn Middle School, and they're going to be speaking about Parsippany climate action.
Hi, my name is Anika.
And my name is Divya.
And today we are here to talk about different climate issues and ways Parsippany can take action. So our presentation is focusing on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 13, and this outlines the excessive greenhouse gas emissions, how our world is warming, and how this is causing disasters and other extreme weather events. So I'm sure you all know what the greenhouse effect is, but to talk about it on a high level, the greenhouse effect is necessary for survival, and excessive greenhouse gases are causing our atmosphere to trap too much heat, increasing the climate's temperature. 51 billion tons of greenhouse gases are being added to the atmosphere every year.
These graphs show how Earth's land and ocean temperatures have increased since 1880. As you can see in the graph on the left, the ocean temperature used to be negative 0.02 degrees Celsius in 1880, and it has significantly increased up until today. Climate change is causing impacts all around us in the forms of tornadoes, hurricanes, forest fires, droughts, and these are very harmful to our Earth's ecosystems and vulnerable communities. Here are some of the climate disasters that occurred in the United States in 2022, and each of these cost the country over $1 billion in expenses and damages. Climate change is causing many communities to be at more risk. For example, many communities are exposed to pollutants that are very dangerous. A lot of younger children have a higher risk of heat stroke and illness than adults, and a lot of communities with older adults are more vulnerable to extreme weather events. Fortunately, there are actions that can be taken to reduce these risks, which is what we want to focus on. So, how can we reduce our carbon footprint and make a difference?
So out of the many issues that are affecting climate change, the first one we're going to be focusing on is meat consumption and how that is related to greenhouse gas emissions. And we're going to be talking about how to adopt meatless Mondays. So firstly, greenhouse gas emissions are emitted from all of these different sectors, from electricity and heat, transportation, buildings, food waste. But firstly, we're focusing on agriculture and land, which has 20.4% of greenhouse gas emissions. So greenhouse gas emissions from the agricultural industry, the different factors contributing to this is deforestation, soil respiration, fertilizers, littering, fires, and livestock is one of the highest contributors. So here we can see greenhouse emissions by food group, and in kilograms of CO2 equivalent to 100 grams of protein. So for a lot of produce, the greenhouse gas emissions are almost 0 in kilograms, but we can see for beef, it is almost 50 kilograms of CO2 for 100 grams of protein. So we can see that beef is the largest culprit in this situation. So let's just dive into the carbon footprint of a single beef burger. So this requires 600 gallons of water, 64.5 feet squared of land, and has a total carbon footprint of 4 pounds, including 0.126 pounds of methane. So the general process just involves like water, land, food for the cows, transportation, refrigeration. But the biggest thing in this process is how cows release methane, and methane absorbs 25 times more heat than carbon. And they release this by microbes in the cow's stomach, break down the cattle feed, and produce energy such as methane.
Here are some striking facts about the meat industry. For starters, 40% of world's produced grain is being fed to livestock, and it takes 100 calories of grain to produce only 3 calories of beef. Also, methane traps 84 times more heat than carbon dioxide in its first 2 decades, and the warming effect of enteric methane is 34 times greater than the warming effect of carbon dioxide over a 100-year period. Lastly, beef and soy account for 2/3 of deforestation in the Amazon, which is a very crazy amount. Putting it even more into perspective, the amount of emissions we would save if you ate just one less serving of beef every Monday for a year is equivalent to 348 miles driven. And if you're wondering how Meatless Mondays actually helps, if the world ate 15% less meat, it would be like taking 240 million cars off of the road every year, which is crazy. Comparing a meat meal to vegetarian meals, you can see that the carbon emission of a bacon cheeseburger would be 7.4 kilograms, while the emissions of 2 vegetarian meals is less than 2 kilograms each. And this is just something important to think about.
So we did a case study if Meatless Mondays would be adopted in Parsippany School District. So if there's about 7,000 students and 1,000 meat lunches are being bought each day, if Meatless Mondays were put in effect, we would save 102,000 pounds of carbon in a single school year.
Meatless Mondays is a campaign that is being practiced all over the country in many different towns and cities, showing that it's very possible for us to do it as well. It is also all over the news about how a meatless diet is so beneficial to our health and to the environment. So, Parsippany, if others did it, why can't we?
So the second topic we're going to be focusing on is consumerism and avoiding fast fashion. So again, back at this graph, industry has 17.9% of global emissions.
Here's some important numbers to note. The graph shows how clothing sales have significantly increased since the year 2000 and how the use of these clothes has gone down so much. The fast fashion industry is a $1.2 trillion industry, and an important thing to know is that a normal brand would have about 2 to 4 drops of clothing per year, while a lot of fast fashion brands today drop new releases almost every week. The average person spends $1,700 on clothes every year and have about 103 items in their closet. The sad thing is that only 20% of these clothing items are actually worn, and a lot of them are only worn about 7 times before they're just tossed away.
So some striking facts. The textile industry is responsible for 8 to 10% of global emissions, greater than aviation and shipping combined. The textile industry uses 79 trillion liters of water and 98 million tons of non-renewable sources annually. 35% of all microplastics and 20% of industrial wastewater comes from the clothing industry. And lastly, 60% of textile fiber produced is used in the clothing industry, but only 1% is recycled, and it takes up to 80 years for the garments to break down in landfills. Here, just showing more about the fashion catastrophe, we can see like beaches are just choking with clothes, and there's excessive air pollution, microplastics in land and water, and there's also dyeing and polluting of rivers.
The first step to making a difference is knowing your brands. Educating yourself on the environmental impact of the brands you shop from will help you make smarter decisions in the future and know where to shop from. Also, we have to slow down our fashion. So renting clothes is a great alternative, and just really reusing what you already have can make such a big difference.
So we just have a quick video about carbon footprint of clothing.
Even as fashion has gotten faster, cheaper, and more disposable, there's another cost to stocking up on fresh looks. Fashion is now one of the most polluting industries in the world. The textile industry alone produces more greenhouse gas emissions than the aviation and shipping industries combined. And the sheer amount of clothes we consume, which already accounts for more than half of all the textiles produced, is expected to keep going up, from 62 million tons in 2015 to 102 million tons by 2030. At that rate, the fashion business would need to use 35% more land and 50% more water.
There's this cute expression in China that you know the color in fashion next season by the color of the rivers in China.
You can see how crazy the fashion industry is. Some more of our work in the community, we were in the Green Fair 2 years ago. We did a library series about Meatless Mondays, and we presented to the town council about our initiative.
So be sure to visit our website, simplygreen.org, and we just have different climate resources and ways for people to take action. And follow our Instagram, Simply Green. Thank you.